addition of
conference
key
will now
information.
be recorded.
Great. Key information and it's sort of a timeline of the work that we're going to be doing as we examine reopening of art and design. So second off, families, students, members of faculty who are joining us tonight, thank you for taking time from your day, your busy schedules. We are all in this together. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is a presentation that combines survey feedback from our families and members of our faculty. And we're also going to be gathering survey data from our students, not just about their experience with remote learning, but also what they'd like to see changed, updated, modified, to make sure that no matter what our options are in the fall, that they're good options. If possible, I would also ask that folks mute their mics. And I want to note that I'm going to do everything I can to keep this brief, not because it's not an important topic, but because I think there's a chancellor's presentation to families at 6:30 tonight as well. So any questions that you have are going to be recorded as part of this. I will receive those questions and I'll work with my team to make sure that we get as many answers as we can out, as well as a copy of this recording. So I would love to be able to mute everyone. I don't know if I have that power.
Like meeting or my school? Yeah, it's fine, right? Like that?
Well, just knowing the videos off with them.
But I am going to try to share my screen.
Yeah, let's try. If everyone can please mute their screens so that we don't get the static feedback. Please mute your phones.
Okay, so this is going to be a quick programming plan and presentation. We revised it over the course of the last week. Quick note, our school is actually opening with more than 1,500 students, which puts us near capacity. Again, we're an 8-year-old facility with classrooms of varying size, narrow hallways, 4 stairwells, 3 elevators, and a space plan, for opening that puts between 7 to 13 students in a room, depending on the size. So, since our last meeting, almost 100 more parents responded to our family survey. As you can see here, there's an almost even split between those families that felt that their child, their young professional, was equally successful in remote instruction in school, and those who felt their young professional was more successful in school, with about 12% of respondents feeling that their young professional was more successful in remote learning. Okay, so that 43.6% is a big issue, and it means that we need to have some type of improvement in terms of engagement, or at the very least, in-person instruction. If we continue with home learning at home in the fall, families feel that live instruction is the most important support, followed by opportunities for social interaction with students' peers, followed then by one-on-one tutoring, recorded videos, peer collaboration, and then paper packets, lastly. Okay. There's also the note of additional instructional opportunities, and that could be extracurricular and could be clubs as well. Parents note that the majority of parents, responded that sending their young professional to our school in person for certain days of the week was preferable to keeping their young professional home full time, or sending their young professional home in 1 week and then off 1 week. What's interesting is that 25% of families who responded to the remote survey over the summer that the DOE created also indicated that they would likely keep their young professional at home for fully remote when the school year began. I'm not talking about the most recent survey. That's coming up in just a second. But as you can see, almost 64%, almost 2/3 of families would prefer students in school some days of the week. Again, this is a breakdown of families who would and degrees of comfort about sending their young professional to the school every day this fall. As you can see, many are uncomfortable with that, with some somewhat uncomfortable. Other families are very comfortable with the idea of sending their young professional to school every day, and others mostly comfortable. This is a really key piece of information that was left out of our last meeting, but it was specifically how many of our students are going to be taking public transportation to the school building. We already knew these numbers to be high, but we just want to contextualize how many of our students do take public transportation and what that may mean for their possible exposure to people, other persons who have or may be infected with COVID-19 or other pathogens. And this is also really important. On the surface, it looks like a promising statistic, but it's troubling. Does your child have reliable access to a tablet, laptop, or computer of their own? This is really important because if you have shared technology, it's one thing, but as many of us know, working professionals, when you're trying to split your resources with somebody else, work becomes almost impossible, at least in a timely fashion. So while only 6.5% of respondents so far indicate they don't have consistent access, that amounts to 38 students, 38 families, and that's out of only 1/3 of families responding. So that means we're going to have to really make sure that we heavy up on tech. Before we can figure out what our options are for reopening in the fall, we need to know how many families are keeping their children at home. We need an accurate count of how many members of faculty are applying for what's called a reasonable accommodation, meaning a health-related reason why they cannot return physically to the school building. We're also going to need more information from our Department of Health and a confirmation from the city and state regarding a timeline for reopening, which I'll share some updates with you in a moment. And lastly, we need a plan that safely addresses egress and ingress, meaning exiting and entering the building. So our options for those that were here last time may see some familiarities. We're going to go over our remote options and then our modified options. And each of these options depend on how many or what percentage of students and families are fully remote. Before we get to those options, we want to remind you that in considering which of these options is best for you and your family, consider who your young professional may put at risk through possible exposure to COVID-19. We're not just talking about students and their peers, we're talking about the wider community, relatives, folks who are living at home, people who we have to care for, other folks who may be immunocompromised. So really just thinking about the broader community. The survey to complete your learning preference is found there, the NICENet survey, and we'll also drop that into the chat. Please stay tuned into citywide events regarding school reopening at the schools.nyc.gov site and their Instagram. And make sure, in the meantime, that your young professionals are completing their summer arts assignments. Remember, this summer, we are only providing arts assignments for the summertime unless your young professional is also enrolled in summer school, at which point they'd be attending remote classes for any course in which they earned an NX, course in progress, or in a course in which they missed credits. If you're not sure if your young professional has summer school, please reach out to me or Ms. Janine Johnson, our parent coordinator, who is on this call as well. And Janine, welcome. Option one for us would be fully remote. That's if everyone's going to continue remote learning like we did in spring. Now, here's the thing. We know it works to an extent. We know we can operate this way, but we've also gotten a lot of feedback from families, students, and faculty that 25 minutes is not enough for a period. So what we would do is probably modify our program to fit something closer to our traditional 44-minute schedule. Again, we don't have that locked in yet, but we recognize that families have requested more time for students to engage in their work, one, and two, an opportunity for there to be a little bit of a break, especially in between the periods themselves. Because if you're going from 9 to 9:25, 9:25 to 9:50, so on and so forth, and you really don't get a break until fourth period, let's say, that's a long stretch of time where a student may be fully invested, engaged in the work, and kind of exhausting. So they might need a break there, especially because we know that cognitive science for adolescents requires breaks so that the students can maximize their learning capacity. And those breaks are usually after no more than 15, maybe 20 minutes of consistent work. Here's another option that we're exploring. Now, if 30% or more of our students and families are fully remote, then this becomes feasible. And this is a Group A and Group B option, where there's going to be one group of students fully remote. Those are the 30% or more. And then you see that every class will then be divided into a Group A and a Group B, so that there's actually going to be a reasonable number of students in a classroom. That would be no more than 11 students in a classroom at a given time, which we should be allowed to fit based on social distancing guidelines. The only thing that we would change as a request to the city is that instead of Mondays being our flip day, Fridays would be our flip day. And that's only because we found that it's better to have that continuous structure Monday through Thursday, with Friday likely being a day that is used as an office day or a support day. We're still considering what additional supports we can provide students with IEPs who require additional time and building that into our weekly schedule for Fridays. Now, this is also an attractive model for us, and it right now is the one that we're leaning towards primarily because the percentage of families that are opting or requesting full-time, from what we understand, would fall into this category. So this is the 6-day cycle for blended opening. And what you can see here is that there's one group that's remote, and that over the course of the next 3 weeks, you go through a cycle where it's A, B, and C in a continuous setting. A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. And what that means is that over the course of 3 weeks, there's an even number of days divided between the 3 different cohorts where they're in the school building. For example, cohort A in week 1 is in the school building 2 times. Cohort B is also in the school building 2 times. But then you'll notice that cohort C is only in once. But that's okay, because what ends up happening is that cohort C the week after is in the building 2 times. Cohort A is in the building 2 times, with cohort B only being once. So again, we follow that cycle, and it allows for a more preventative class. The only challenge for us here is, well, there's a bunch of challenges. If I may be frank, one of the largest challenges is not every class is going to have the same students, and we have to figure out a way that intelligently divides each class into thirds. That's going to be a big snag, but we're going to work on it if that's what we end up going with. It's not familiar to us, and unfortunately, one of the issues that's going to come up is if we have many members of our faculty who take a reasonable accommodation request, then we're going to have an issue where the traditional instructional model may not even be relevant. So we're going to have to consider what can we do to have students in the building and still make learning relevant, meaningful, specifically for their core content, specifically for the arts. So here are some other things that we're considering right now since our last meeting. These are additions that have come up. Dividing days into core or arts days. For example, if you are on that A schedule, I just want to flip back to, right? Group A, the A schedule, the first time you're in for the week, you'd be working on core classes and only the 4. And then on your next day in that week, actually, sorry, this is the model. Cohort A, there we go. Cohort A on Monday, you're in your core classes, only your 4 core, and all the other electives are going to be fully remote. And then on Thursday, you see that cohort A comes in again, and those may be all arts classes for that day. That way, there's still a concerted focus on the arts, but we also ensure that there's support for core instruction. Again, just an idea. Oh, excuse me. Just an idea. We know that we're focusing on creating opportunities for our freshmen, our rising 9th graders, to get to know each other better. So we're developing a bridge program for August. We also want to make sure that we prioritize social emotional learning and those same social connections, which are going to be so key. We haven't lost the idea also of prioritizing in-building learning for our freshmen, specifically for the reason that they're going to need to, 1, familiarize themselves with the building space, and 2, with each other and their teachers, especially if we want to have that strong starting point. Again, that's not set in stone, it's just an idea. Lastly, by we, I mean PS 59, Beekman Hill, which is located on the 1st through 3rd floors of our building, as well as MS 169, as well as the pre-K school around the corner, are all petitioning our city council to run a part-time shutdown on 56th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue, between that time in the morning, 8:15 to 9:15, and then 2:15 to 3:15. And the reason why we did that is because, again, getting into the building is, even with 300 to 400 students on a daily basis, and that's our school alone, is going to be a Herculean task. The number of students at PS 59 that come out at the end of the day is close to, I believe, 550 on any given day, maybe a little bit more. And because of that, every single one of those students must be escorted. Every single one of those students must be picked up by an adult, which is going to cause the kind of, already does cause a rather chaotic bottlenecking on our block. So we need to find a way to create more space for this to happen, because just getting into the building alone is going to be tough. Again, the limitations we have are health guidelines, morning entry and transportation, what that's going to look like, protocols around illness. We don't yet know what's going to happen if a positive case emerges. It may be the same as spring, where the school goes into shutdown, everybody quarantines who was near the affected person, and then after 24 hours of deep cleaning, we reopen, or different protocols may emerge. Some people are talking about a 5% infection baseline, meaning that as long as no more than 5% of a school population is infected at a given moment, then it's still operational. That was a concept that was literally being floated by the state. I'm not going to lie to the art and design community. That makes me very uncomfortable. Any single member of our community testing positive and knowing that we could have prevented their illness makes me uncomfortable. Again, we don't know what the reasonable accommodation requests from faculty are, but we anticipate close to 20%. And space for faculty when not in classrooms is also an issue. So our plan for the deadline is August 14th. Student surveys, and that's the ones where families and students select if they're going to be by August 7th. I can't even see that list until August 10th, which really is going to slow down our ability to plan. We're roughly going to have 2 to 3 days to figure it out, and then we're going to have to move ahead. And then lastly, staffing accommodation requests are done on a rolling basis, but we've already received about 10. And we anticipate, again, there will be more. So I'm going to switch it over to questions and feedback, knowing that we don't have a whole lot more time for this meeting. I'm going to stop sharing now. And pardon me for just a moment.
It's 6 to 7. What's he talking about?
There we go. Okay, and we're back. So there's tons of questions. And oh boy. Okay.
Where do you want to start?
I would, it's like I would love to start at the top. It's one of those things where I've only gone through so many points so far, but I think I will go from the top if that's okay. I'll get through as much as I can, say over the course of the next 10 to 15 minutes.
Right,
I know.
and this is being recorded, everyone, so that includes the chat. So your questions will get answered, okay? Eventually. We may not be able to cover them in the next 10, 15 minutes. All.
Right. So some people I'm going to start, there's a lot of muting stuff happening, and then around 6:08, Jeff asked a great question. So I'm going to start from there, work my way down, and everybody else, if I don't get to your question, my most profound apologies. My team and I will work to address them, and hopefully I'll answer them. Are we looking at a different model other than 3 cohorts or 4 cohorts? So really the models we've shown are either 3 cohorts, 2 in person and 1 digital, or 3 in person and 1 digital. Our concerns from last week are still the same. We don't have ventilated stairwells, and there is always a chance that in-person schooling won't happen at all. That's not just on account of our stairwells. That's quite literally across the city. Will there be ventilation brought into the stairwell? Even with a request to the school construction authority, that would likely not be the case during this school. So we are a school that uses a recycled air system, and as a result, we don't pull in air from the outside. Is it even a possibility? It actually is. It would force us to reroute a lot of our AC units, which might be problematic. The other issue is moving air into the stairwells, because the classrooms have intake and exiting airflow, but the stairwells do not. It's just not how they're built. Is there a chance of pushing back the start time, Pete asks, so the kids can ride the subway after rush hour? What we're considering is a number of different models where a later start time may be possible. We have to see. We're not going to go multi-session, but we may push back the start time. The length of the periods would still be the same. And if we end up doing one day as core instruction and one day as arts instruction, it would actually keep the workday very short for most students. And in doing so, the reason why we would choose that model, just to clarify, is so that we can make sure that students are receiving their instruction in a single classroom. They don't have to ambulate between different classes, and the teachers are the ones who would be shifting from classroom to classroom. When will last year seniors be able to retrieve contents of their lockers? Great question. So a survey has gone out, or will be going out tonight. And I agree, I apologize for the delay, but we've been waiting to hear back from our central office. So starting tomorrow, our school aides and members of our administrative team are going to be clearing out all of those lockers. A survey is going out tonight from Ms. Johnson's desk, which is a doodle survey, so that you can find a 5-minute window of time to come to the school between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. any day next week. That's Monday through Friday. We're going to have folks in the building. Students' belongings are going to be placed into clear bags labeled by name, and parents or students will be able to come pick them up. And the reason why we're doing 5-minute windows is obviously to maintain an orderly fashion and not to have too many people at the building at once. When senior families come to pick up their personal belongings, they'll also receive a copy of their yearbook. As far as checks, if there are any senior due refunds that have to go out, those are going to be mailed out next week as well, later on in the week. And as far as any technology that was borrowed or materials that students have, we're going to have bins for those to be returned to, and then our tech team and administrative team will sort those out. So that is happening, and that information should be going out today. Next item from Monica. We've opted in for blended learning, but now have changed our minds and want to go fully remote. What do we do? Fill out that survey. Fill out that survey, the one that is on the DOE central site. You'll get there. It's also in the chancellor's letter. And before we're out of here today, we'll drop that link into the chat one more time.
And just so that everyone knows, the deadline for that you have is up until August 7th.
Yes.
I believe.
A lot of folks feel that, Karine mentioned, this is important too, that families' feelings about how the preferred model can change. So the DOE has articulated that there are going to be 4 times where if you've opted out, you can opt back in. I want to remind folks that we are that the model that our school uses for marking periods does not correlate to the quarterly basis that the DOE has elected to use as the opt-in time. Nevertheless, we will do everything we can to make sure that when you opt back in, that there's as little disruption as possible to your young professionals program. Should you respond to the survey again if you've changed your mind? Yes. Yes, please do. And I see the surveys in there. Thank you so much for posting that. Do 9th graders have summer homework? Again, yes, the arts assignments for foundations in our history. If you're not sure if your child has summer school, please reach out to Ms. Johnson. That's jjohnson32 at schools.nyc.gov. Are students supposed to be on this call? They can be, but what I intend to do is also have recorded videos sent out to all students, and a survey is going out to all of our current students through their guidance Google Classrooms within the next 12 hours. That's going to ask them their feelings about, again, the model that they want to see in the school building. I'm trying to exhale. Thank you, Tina. I'm working on it. Going to be in contact with questions about forms. Again, all forms questions should be taken care of by Ms. Johnson, who is, speaking of Herculean tasks, is helping welcome in our new freshman class. In case you didn't know, this is one of our largest incoming 9th grade cohorts ever. We're still currently sitting at about 425, and that's including summertime attrition. When I said that we were near capacity, I wasn't kidding. But it's, if any, I mean, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing, but we're not getting any bigger than 1,500. I'll tell you that much. What about students with IEPs that choose to go fully remote? So regardless of whether your learner has an IEP or not, we're still going to include the same supports. One of the big questions that's come up with for us and for our faculty is, if a teacher's in the building teaching their class, what obligation do they have to simultaneously provide synchronous learning to students who are learning fully remotely? Which is a fair question. And I think it's a huge challenge when you're teaching a classroom of students to also be digitally available for everybody else who is in that class. So we're figuring out a work schedule, and believe me, the teachers union is also asking a lot of questions about this, that fits the teachers and students' needs, that's reasonable. That, say, if your young professional has integrated co-teaching, 2 teachers in a room, there's a set time where they can receive that instruction and get the support from the co-teacher so that their education is still not only meets their IEP, but is relevant and meaningful. If you're having trouble creating a Google account and you're a student, email me. I will totally take care of that, and I'm going to put my my art and design email. Well, actually, I will. There we go. Sorry, everything's going slow right now for me because too many windows. But I'm placing my email into the chat. It'll load in just a second, and that is for questions, concerns, but then also if you're having issues with technology, because I can help move things around and troubleshoot over the course of the summer. So, sorry, I lost my spot, which I knew I shouldn't have written in
Okay, it's okay. Let's see. Okay, we talked about picking up stuff. Reminders from Janine. Will school transportation be provided in September?
School transportation will begin as soon as the school year begins for in-person learning, and as long as your young professional has not opted into fully remote learning, then the Office of Pupil Transportation and the school will collaborate to make sure that we have a reasonable transportation schedule. Now, what are those buses going to look like? What is busing going to look like? Great question. I don't have the answer to that yet, but I was in I left my apartment this past weekend so that I could get some Thai food. And I was downtown in Manhattan, and I saw all these restaurants with fiberglass and plexiglass partitions that were
Yeah,
clear.
yeah.
What I noticed was that there was a huge number of families, of patrons who weren't that far from each other, but were separated using those partitions. And I know that the same type of recommendation has been made from the state as far as what's acceptable for social distancing. So I have a suspicion that's how many of the buses will also work. And if folks are asking questions about if that's how our classrooms are going to look, we are now planning with our custodial engineer the spacing and classroom organization to make sure that that we can still maintain social distancing, again, with no more than, as you saw before, say 13 students in a room. If that means plexiglass and we can afford it, then great, but that may also be a pretty tall order.
Is it possible for remote students to visit with a guidance counselor once or
Great
twice a
question.
month?
That's a great question. When you're talking about visiting with the guidance counselor, if you mean in-person visiting, that depends on two things. One, if the guidance counselors themselves are not going to be out of the building for their own reasonable accommodation requests, because we may not have certain members of our guidance team in the building physically. Could we then hold video conferences? You bet. And are we working on developing a systemized schedule? We are. One of the reasons why we're doing that and figuring out with guidance how they can see every student on a semi-regular basis is that a lot of the work that our guidance department had to do this past year, and I really for many years past, is the social and emotional support work, which isn't their job. It's not to say that they're not excellent at dealing with crises and helping students work through a lot of the stresses, anxieties, and difficulties that they face. But the other part of it is that these are academic counselors, meaning that their plan is really to work with students on the academic goals that they've set forth, meeting graduation requirements, and then working through what that plan would look like. We've received additional support in from the Office of Mental Health, and we've already started meeting with them about exactly what clinicians working within our school building would look like, and working with our community for teletherapies and telecounseling as well. Those referrals would take place through our guidance department, but we feel that that strategic partnership and the grant we received there is going to alleviate a lot of the heavy hitting concerns that students experience, especially those that face really consistent issues around mental health struggles. But we recognize that that's a growth area for the school. So I know that was a really long-winded answer, but guidance will be meeting with students on a regular and semi-regular basis, and we're going to be alleviating a lot of the meeting time that would otherwise be held up with people in crisis or dealing with emotional issues over to our mental health supports.
Someone is asking about AP classes.
Still got
Are
them.
they still, yeah.
Yeah, AP is totally happening. And just in the same way that the College Board has become a bit more nimble in their approach towards AP classes and AP testing, the requirements have changed a little bit. So too will we have to adjust. One of my goals, as I spoke to many parents last year during our PTA meetings and just as the community, is that we still want to make sure that our students graduate art and design not only well positioned and to go do great things in post-secondary and bring the professionalism that they've cultivated here, but also to leave our school with enough college credits to offset most of the first year of college expenses. We now see that many colleges are maintaining the same costs despite delivering primarily remote learning. And we want to make sure that the experience of university is both meaningful and cost effective. So we're still moving forward with AP classes. We're still investigating and having the conversation right now with the College Now folks about what that may look like for our students as well, because we want to maintain that as an extracurricular option for college credit. And we're still exploring articulation for every single one of our majors, as well as some of our core classes. So that all hit a bit of a snag in the spring, but it's continuing on, to answer your question.
Okay. Will the school provide support purchase for software if remote learning is picked? Not quite sure.
Yeah, so if there's certain software
Separate
programs,
software? Yeah.
yeah, so if it's like the Adobe suite of programs, in a perfect world, we make sure that every student has the right technology and the right software to run on their computers. We gave out tons of, for example, Chromebooks to students and families over the course of spring, and those aren't compatible with the Adobe suite. They're just not. So we had to advocate that the same type of technology tools or freeware was used instead. Now, if we can do blended learning in the building, then the expectation is that any practice that takes place around those tools takes place in the building. It would be irresponsible of us to try to ask students to do design work at home if they don't have the tech. But if it becomes a matter of us finding a subsidized or lower cost institutional payment system for Adobe that works for most students and families, then we'll do everything we can to make it happen. We did secure a grant from Keith Power's office to receive a new cart of MacBooks, but that's not going to be enough for all the students whose families need. And we're hoping that an additional tech grant from the Office of the Manhattan Borough President comes through pretty soon, because we fully intend to use those monies to also ensure that we have fully up-to-date tech.
Okay, someone's asking about art kits and how much they will cost. Just so everyone knows, incoming freshmen will all receive an art kit. I'm not sure if that's the art kit that the question is addressing.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
So we're going ahead with ordering those art kits, and then
Yes.
as far as delivery, we will be mailing them. Or if we're doing in-person instruction, we'll make sure that those art kits are available. And for anyone who is not sending their young professional to the school building, we'll find a way to get it to you. We've been driving stuff all over the city all summer long.
Will temperatures be taken?
If that's a protocol that the Office of Health determines, yes. And we also know that temperature is not an accurate or guaranteed gauge of infection, that it's just one element, and it does raise questions. For example, if a young professional comes in, has an elevated temperature, is also immediately sent home and asked to quarantine, even if they don't in fact have COVID-19. I know that that's been a protocol in the past, so what we don't want to do is deny people the opportunity to come in, but at the same time, we know that while it's been, studied to be effective at measuring temperature, it's again not a good indication that you can tell if someone is sick or not.
Right. Does freshmen have summer art assignments, and where can they find them?
Yep, on the school website, the link has been dropped in the chat several times I've seen, but it's summer arts. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I can keep going. It's up to you.
Listen, I know we've gone. I didn't set like an end time for that exact same reason. I can. We're already sort of stepping into the chancellor's web conference time. I can take maybe a few more minutes of questions, and then we'll adjourn for now. Anything that I wasn't able to get to, my team will respond to and prepare in an FAQ.
Okay, perfect.
I have a question.
Sure. Who's this?
Yes, ma'am. The father of Susan Segundo. So I see many problems in the past about remote learning. The architecture software is big for the computer from the school. So how can I help the students in that case?
So if I understand you correctly, what you were talking about was the architectural software.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we did this year, I should mention a couple things. First off, is that we had great results for our Certiport exams for students who tested for the software that the school uses. First for design, and then for CAD as well as Revit. One of the reasons why we were successful is because the same design principles that we practice in the school building, we were able to take online using other design software like SketchUp. It doesn't change the fact that the Revit and CAD language is unique to those programs. So the teachers continue to teach through those same design principles and language, but practice them using a different type of software that was available to all students. As far as getting access to that software and the licenses for it, that's something that we can discuss with our tech department to figure out if that's feasible for students at home. But I'm almost 99% certain that unless you have a very powerful computer that can handle the processing speed required for those programs, it's not going to be a good fit.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, does anyone have another question?
Can you
No?
tell us a little bit about how
Yes,
IEPs
I have a question.
Oh, just one at a time, please, one at a time.
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
could you talk about students with IEPs and what we might do to sort of make sure they get services?
So the students with IEPs are going to receive every service to which their IEP entitles them. I'll give you an example of what that looks like in the context of a student, say, with ICT, who also receives counseling and also receives speech. So our co-teachers teach at the same time online. Say it's fully remote. They're still teaching synchronously online, so that one teacher may be delivering elements of the lesson while the other is helping moderate the chat or breaking into a parallel teaching model in a small group. And then there's other ways that we also, again, break grouping down smaller and work differentiation into our delivery of content. But specifically for things like counseling, our social workers and academic counselors do teletherapy sessions with students, either teletherapy or video therapy, as whatever is preferred by the student and family once the waivers are completed. And the same thing goes for speech and language pathology supports. So all of those services are included. Now, if there's something very unique to a student's IEP, say it's something like FM units or hearing loss support, things where a unique accommodation needs to be made, that's something that our special education team, our SBST at the school can handle. But I would ask that you send any very specific questions around special education to our AP of special ed, who's Terry Budney. That's T. Budney at schools. Hopefully I answered some part of your question.
That was great, thanks.
There was
Can I ask a
someone.
quick question?
Sure.
Okay, I just
got
wanted
time.
to know if the college advisory center, the room with all the computers, is that going to physically be open at all, or will that all be done virtually?
That's a great question. So that's, I mean,
Because my daughter's is going to go. She's going to be a senior, so I'm interested in that.
Sure. And I think that's very relevant. What I will say is this: we're still going to have our college office available. They're still going to be college advisory through our college counselor, as well as the folks who are running our associated programs through the Office of Secondary Post-Secondary Outcomes, as well as through the NYU Advising Corps that we plan on partnering with again into this year. The college office is on my floor, on the 6th floor, and I've gone into it a few times because we've actually had to repurpose the Chromebooks from that office for students in remote learning. And at first we were like, can we turn this into a classroom? Because we might need to, based on the space. And I don't think we're going to have to, but I do think that at maximum, the college office wouldn't allow for more than 5 students at a time in that whole college office space. And the college counselor's office itself is a very small, non-ventilated office within the office. So that's going to be its own other challenge. But I want to say yes when we're open, again, contingent on whether or not our college counselor, who will be a new college counselor, is going to be in person or remote. And I don't have that answer for you just yet. But it's absolutely an important consideration because we want to focus more for this coming year on portfolio development and college application and planning for our seniors.
Okay, thank you.
So I have time for one more question. I think no matter how much water I drink, I'm going to lose my voice. So.
Yes, question.
One last question.
Hi, I had a question. I wanted to know
Yes.
We can't hear you. If you want to put it into the chat, go ahead, but we can't hear you.
my son has the Chromebook and
I have a question.
to doing the fully remote. Am I expected? I'm sorry. Am I if I opted into the fully remote program, should I return the Chromebook or hold on to the Chromebook?
Hold on to that Chromebook if you're opting into fully remote. The likelihood is higher than not that your son is going to need that. And we've accounted for every student and family that still has tech that's either borrowed from the city or borrowed from the school. If for whatever reason we switched computer systems or needed to do replacements, we've accounted for these things already. So we're good to go there. If you have tech and you haven't graduated, hang on to it for now.
Okay, unfortunately, we're going to have to stop right there. If anyone has any additional questions, you can either email Janine, Max, or the PTA and with your questions, and we'll get them answered. This call is being recorded, so we'll make sure if we missed any questions that they're answered also. Okay?
And I would just like to close out. Thank you, Barbara. I would like to close out by thanking Barbara, Evie, Janine, our parent coordinator, members of our faculty who joined tonight, as well as every single parent who came through, and students as well. Your participation in this process is incredibly important. We're working as much as we can to be transparent. And one of the issues that comes up is every time that we think we have some element of fall figured out, two new challenges, like a hydra, come up in its place. But we are fully committed to making sure that we have a plan that works when we are allowed back in our building. And there might be a little bit of, growing pains with that plan, but we're committed to making sure that we work through whatever those pains are so that we can still be successful this coming year. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate
We
you.
think you're doing a great job. You guys, if you want to unmute your phones now and give a
When is,
round of applause,
when is the next meeting?
Max, you're doing a great
Clap.
job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Guys, you know next go.
Thank you.
When is the next meeting? Hi. When is the next meeting?
How do I get out of
So
here?
we don't have another meeting set, but I'll send notification of when, if we do schedule another one before August 14th.
Thank you.
Tyler the Creator.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Stay safe.